Hello, everybody. Welcome to this LinkedIn Live. I am Jim Collison. I'm here with Austin Suellentrop, and we're here to officially launch the
Woohoo.
Clifton Strengths for Sales report today. Austin, congratulations on the launch of this new report.
Thank you, Jim. Congrats to you as well. This is exciting times. It's been a long time in the making, and whenever we as a team can take our thinking and our research and our expertise and translate it into something that our users, our coaches, our customers can use, it's an exciting time. So really excited to get this out there.
Austin, we're going to ask our LinkedIn. We're live on LinkedIn. We're going to ask those folks that are joining us on LinkedIn in the chat. We'd love for you to put your top 5 if you want to do that, and we'll interact with that a little bit. And then I kind of want to ask the question: is we're letting folks join us. What do you influence? I think oftentimes I think of sales. This is kind of my thought. It's an influencing. Doesn't mean you have to have influencing things to make it happen, but
Right.
it is an influencing operation. And so I like to ask people. Some people would say, like, I don't feel like necessarily I'm in a sales role as a
Right.
podcaster, but I am because I'm an influencer. So
Yeah.
I want to ask the audience, what do you influence? And if you're in direct sales, or if you feel like you're in a sales role, you mention that as well. But what do you influence? Austin, if I were to ask you that question, how would you answer that? What's your area of influence?
Wow, what a great question. When I think about that, I'm thinking primarily mindset. I'm trying to influence people to think a little bit differently.
Mm,
And that I believe if we can get people to adopt the strengths-based mindset of focusing on what's right with others rather than focusing on what's wrong with them, that's the goal I have. So
mm,
whether that's an individual I'm working with, I coach youth sports. So whether that's influencing fellow coaches or parents or children themselves to think about their behavior, their performance a little bit differently. That's a piece of it. But then I also obviously spend a lot of time with organizations and managers and leaders. So helping them focus on what they are good at, what their people are good at. That's what I'm influencing more than anything.
mm.
Everything we do with Clifton Strengths are tools. They're it's part of a toolkit to help that mindset take flight.
Well, we're going to talk a little bit more about that here in a second. We're seeing some
Mhm.
folks check in on this again. If you'd like to put your top
Love it.
5 in the chat and drop that in, Riley's behind the scenes posting those on the video here, and we love to see that. Ursula says, "Influence people." What do you influence? Is the question I asked, and Ursula says, "Influence people and organizations."
Absolutely.
And in Austin, in that role, I always in the role that I'm in as a podcaster is using that communication talent to
Mhm.
move people, right?
Yeah.
Just move them in a direction. I'm the very, very, very top of the funnel at times when we think of that marketing funnel, right? Just getting people moving in some direction, right? And so we're asking the audience here, what do you influence?
Love it.
And we're getting some great comments. Keep those coming. Great to see you. Thanks for coming out here. We've got some great information ahead. And Austin, let me for the Clifton Strengths, and hopefully, if you're just
Yeah.
joining us, you're subscribed to the Clifton Strengths podcast. If you haven't done that yet, write that down or take a second when we're done here. Head out to your favorite podcast app and
Mm.
subscribe to the Clifton Strengths podcast. You'll get lots of information like this. You'll get programs like this, plus a lot of great stuff around well-being that's going on right now. And get
For
out
sure.
there and get subscribed. I am Jim Collison. I'm here with Austin Suellentrop. We're here to officially launch. Today is a launch day for the Clifton Strengths for Sales report. Austin, welcome and congratulations.
Hey, thank you very much, Jim. Really proud, excited. Can't wait to get it out there in the universe and let people experience it and share their feedback with us.
Austin, give us just a basics before we kind of dig in on selling
Mhm.
strategy. Give us some basics about this report,
Yeah,
why we did it, and what's available to
absolutely.
individuals.
So this is the second in a series of what we are calling role-based reports. Last year, this time, we launched the Clifton Strengths for Managers report. This is the next in that series of this Clifton Strengths for Sales report, which is designed to take the topic and the content of strengths and get really tactical about how it helps, hinders, and things that salespeople can do to use their strengths every day. Right. So it's designed to be that in the moment, super direct, tactical sort of tool to help apply strengths day in, day out. It is aimed, the sort of target here are people who are engaged in B2B sales, I would say is the sweet spot here, but I don't want to limit salespeople to think of this as only a B2B sales tool. You'll see language like clients and customers and prospects throughout. So we're thinking about whatever that looks like to you. This absolutely has application in direct sales, right? This absolutely has application in those of us who are in indirect sales, who, like you, Jim, like you mentioned, sort of top of the funnel, helping with lead generation and so forth. This is really, we think about what's happening. Why did we do this? The sales landscape has changed dramatically. And all the change of the workplace over the last couple of years, that the pandemic sort of, I think, accelerated. As we're coming out of that phase of the workplace evolution, what we've seen is that some organizations have been able to gain new customers quicker, more effectively, more efficiently than others. And a big part of that is how quickly their salespeople themselves were able to adapt to new ways of selling. Right. I talk about, my background before I joined Gallup. I was a banker, right? I was in the relationship sales business. So I was in sort of building long-term relationships, but it's absolutely a different game in the banking industry now than it was 5-7 years ago. And how much I relied upon the face-to-face conversation with clients or prospects to gain and build that relationship. Well, there's a lot of industries where, salespeople thrived on I called it the grip and grin experience, right? Walk up, shake hands, get to know them, take them to lunch, bring, my wife's a nurse, been a nurse for 15 years. How many sales reps come by with meals and coffee and donuts? Those days are gone for a lot of industries. The face-to-face is a tough thing to get. You got to sell differently. And so this tool is designed to help people understand that their best way of selling is not emulating somebody else's sales success. It's figuring out how their strengths make them unique in how they sell. And that's what this report's designed to do.
Austin, we've said, and it's even titled, it's got the word sales in it. We get some questions from individuals, though, that could this be used for other kinds of roles? And so as we think about sales or influencing, how could this fit other roles as well?
Yeah, I think what you're going to see with this report is less of a focus on the aspirational developmental aspect of strengths, right? Thinking about the universal application and the who you are at your core and what the potential of that looks like in any situation. Like the 34 report is still the premier personal developmental tool we have. What this is going to do is going to get much more tactical. It's going to feel very, very much like a personalized view of somebody's day. So if you're in customer service and part of your job in customer service is resolving client issues, expanding sort of and upselling customers and helping them find the right solutions and retaining them, if that's part of the goals that their customer service has, then absolutely there's application here. But understanding culture to culture, the role of customer service may look different company to company. So the best way to understand whether or not this would apply to your team or your organization or maybe some prospects of yours is to take a look at the content and to dig into it and see how you think it fits with the culture of what you're looking for.
Since we are Gallup and we collect a lot of data, let's talk about it from a sales perspective. When we think about focusing for salespeople, focusing on their strengths, right? What kind of numbers do we see in performance and increased performance?
Well, we've always talked. We cite our big meta analysis a lot, right? And like you said, we do research at Gallup all the time, and we've always said, well, we know that organizations who focus on strengths perform better than those that don't. And what's great about sales organizations is they measure so much themselves and they have so many core metrics that it becomes really easy for us to be able to identify what that performance looks like. So when we look at salespeople individually, just the people themselves, not the team, not the organization, the individuals, we see that salespeople who receive strengths-based coaching, 11% higher volume in sales and a 6% higher closing percentage. So not only do they get higher volume of sales, they close a higher percentage of their business as well. So they're both more effective and more efficient, right? Which I think is a fantastic sort of a way to state the case for why an investment in something like this makes sense. But that's at the individual level, right? So that's me, you, anybody who does this, who understands how their strengths help them in their role. But then if we look at the organizational level, if we then take this and say, okay, we can apply this across our company, across our department, whatever it may look like, and we work organizationally at it, we see anywhere between 10 to 20 or 10 to 19% higher organizational sales increase. So that's the cumulative aspect of our improvement. So there's an ability here to see both an individual local impact as well as sort of the macro higher level impact.
Austin, when we look at this report, you mentioned you gave a little indicative who we wrote it for,
Mm-hmm.
but when we think about specific roles, and
Yeah.
what did we have in mind as we were looking at this and writing these statements? What, like, who are we thinking of? Even though we think it's for everybody, who are we thinking of?
I was thinking of anybody in an organization who's responsible for growing, retaining, or attracting customers. Right? That's the key. We know that customers today are more important and more difficult to get than ever. Customers are more informed. They pay more attention to what your organization is saying publicly and doing. And so there's a lot more data points that a customer can take in than they've ever had before. And so we know that the competition for customers is only increasing. So who in your organization is responsible for going and getting new customers? Now, most organizations, that's going to be a salesperson of some sort, business development, account leaders, whatever terminology makes sense to your culture. But the people who are out there reaching out to prospects or engaging in relationships with existing clients and trying to retain and grow them, or maybe a role I used to play in the sales organization was when we had troubled relationships, so relationships that weren't going well. I was oftentimes the person who would step in and sort of be the new face to try to give them a new perspective and retain the client and sort of smooth things over. So whatever the role looks like in your culture, it's really about who is going out and connecting with and gaining customers for you. That's who we're aiming at.
While we're doing this LinkedIn Live, we
Mhm.
take your questions live. You can put
Awesome.
them in chat. We'll be monitoring for that. If you got some specific questions you want to ask us, if you're listening on the Clifton Strengths podcast and you have questions, you can always email us, coaching@gallup.com. Not just for coaches, anyone can send us those
Absolutely.
emails, and we'd love to get back to you on that. Austin, let's talk a little bit. How does this fit for individuals who maybe have just their top five,
Yeah.
maybe, or maybe they don't? How does
Yeah.
this fit into our infrastructure of reports that we have available to them?
Absolutely. Great question. So, we have traditionally offered two different kinds of reports. We have had what I would sort of say is our introduction report, which is the top five. The top five is the most commonly used, right? We see this. It introduces you to your top five themes, and it gives you two different tools. One is sort of a standard definition of these top five themes. And the second report is what we call our insight report. And it gives you personalized sort of insights around your top five. So this sort of gives you information about these themes relative to all of your talents, sort of how they all mix together, if you will, right? And then we have our second set of reports, which is our CliftonStrengths 34. That's our premier report. That's going to be the latest, greatest version of our tools, which is bright and it's colorful, and it gives you insight to your top 10. It gives you insight to your bottom five and sort of your domain balance, how to manage blind spots and potential around weaknesses. The whole nine is included in there. These role-based reports, the manager report last year, and then now this sales report, it's designed to be somewhere sort of in the middle of those two, in that it's more depth than the top five because it's a top 10 report. So it gives you the top 10 themes, and there's 2 pages of content for each theme. So this report's got 20 pages of theme-specific content. Okay, that's a lot of content. But it's not going to go into your full profile. It's not designed to replace the full 34 by any means. That's still the premier tool. But what this does is, because it is written sort of through the lens of a specific role, and written through the lens of a salesperson, we're able to write standard content. So everybody that has Achiever, your 2 pages of this report are going to be the same, right? If you have Significance, your 2 pages will be the same. But because it's written through the lens of your role as a salesperson, it oftentimes feels personalized, right? And so what this allows us is it allows us to scale this report up and go global with it. So we've prioritized globalization of this report over the individualization. So it's launched today in English. We're already actively working on the translations to go live in 10 languages with this. And by the end of the summer, we'll have all 10 of those languages up and available for purchase around the world. So we're really excited that this is designed to be sort of the next step in learning. If you've only got your top 5, great. This is going to be a way to expose you to the tactical approach to your top 10. If you've got your full 34, great. We're going to focus on your dominant themes here, your top 10, and how they show up in your role. But if this is your introduction to strengths, what I love about using this kind of a tool to introduce somebody to strengths is immediately it positions strengths as a useful tool in the workplace. It's not just a feel-good thing. It's not just oh, that was neat. I like that. I talk good about myself. No, it helps. It's a tool that can help you perform better. That's what it is. And we can aim that performance at whatever your desired outcomes are.
So for brand new individuals, they've never taken CliftonStrengths before, they'll get their top 5 and this sales report with the
You will.
purchase of the report, and they get 2 for 1 on that. Let's talk about the individual, Austin. As we think about an individual downloading this report, you've been inside and out on this report.
Yeah.
What are some recommendations you'd give an individual on how to use this report?
Yeah, love it. So I think the first thing and what we've the feedback we've gotten from people who have been using this now for a while as we've been testing it and sort of getting it out there is strengths should always be affirming of who you are. So the first thing I would encourage anybody to do is to read through it and find those things that really resonate with you, whether it be a help statement of, oh, this is how that thing can help me. I never thought about it that way. Or it could be a hinder statement of, wow, yeah, okay, I know I need to be mindful of this. Like, first identify what really resonates with you first that can maybe affirm or support thinking you already had. But secondly, you're going to get 4 action items for each of your top 10 themes. So you're going to get a list of potentially 40 actions. I do not encourage you to put all 40 on the list and try to accomplish them all next week, right? But which of those actions may make the most sense for you to start trying, given what you're working on right now? The last page of the report is a really helpful tool, right? We've taken one of our favorite application tools, which is a simple strengths wheel. So your last page of your report will include your top 10 themes in color, sort of populated in a wheel form, and we'll encourage you to put a goal in the middle. What are you trying to work on? What's something you're ahead of you're working on right now? Maybe it's you've got to close this big deal that you've been working on. Maybe you're trying to refill your pipeline of prospects. Maybe you got a big sales goal for the second half of the year. It's June 1st. We got the last 6 months of the year ahead of us. How are you going to hit that goal? Come up with that goal in first. Put that in the middle of the circle, and then look at the wheel around it and think, what strengths do I have that I can lean on to help me accomplish that goal? And then how will you know you've been successful? And by writing those things down, it gives you a starting point for what your plan looks like. And that as you go to work, either whether it be the rest of the day today, whether it's tomorrow on a fresh, clean start, we're coming off of a holiday weekend here in the US. A lot of people are sort of in that reset mode, trying to get re-energized for the second half of the year. What better way to do that than with your strengths at the core, with your strengths in mind, thinking about how you're going to be the best to do that.
I love that. I love that. Is if whether we think about finishing out the year strong, or thinking about, hey, how do I want to start the second, the third, and the fourth quarter strong?
Yeah.
There's some real practical applications there for you. And I love your advice, maybe not to try and accomplish it all in one day.
Yeah.
As you do that, there's a lot of information for you there. As we think about sales teams or teams in general, Austin, how can this be used in a way? How can a manager use this with their teams? Like maybe to say they could use top 5 report. How would they use the sales report with their
Yeah,
team?
absolutely. What this does, again, if I'm a sales manager and I've got a team of salespeople, this gives me sort of the shorthand version of what to be looking for in my sales team. When I see my team succeed, what of those behaviors can I directly correlate to their strengths? And when I see my team struggle, what of that may be the evidence of strengths maybe getting in their way? And understanding that oftentimes, especially salespeople, they're always looking for the next trick, the next shortcut, the next way to be better. It's amazing how much time and money salespeople will invest to try and improve their performance. That's why a lot of sales organizations around the world have big sales conferences. They're willing to send their people to training. They're willing to invest in tools because they know that if that investment turns out, it results in new customers. It results in performance betterment for the organization. But what we find is so often the one thing that all those best practices and all of those tools and tricks have in common is that they are focused on emulating somebody else's success. It's seven traits of a great salesperson, or it's the top 10 habits of a fantastic salesperson. And they're oftentimes an individual salesperson sort of regurgitating how they did it, which is great. There are things to learn from successful people. But if we as salespeople approach it and try to do it that exact same way, it may not be aligned with who we are. And so as a sales manager, this can help you understand, am I encouraging my people to do it the way I did it? Am I encouraging my people to do it the way others do it? Or am I encouraging my people to find their way of doing it? And how can I best support them in identifying their path to excellence? Like that's the big opportunity here. And being able to sit down with a salesperson on your team and have this kind of a tool that breaks down the tactics of how strengths show up every day is a great tool to help that.
Austin, we want to take some questions from those that are listening live.
Please.
So if they're
Love
out
it.
there, we'd love to go ahead and throw those in chat and we'll take them. I'll ask you one more question before we head out there to grab audience questions.
Mhm.
As we think about a management team,
Mm-hmm.
oftentimes we think of teams of a sales team, but often, in a lot of organizations, we have teams of managers.
Mm-hmm.
How am I at the manager level? And maybe even talk about how could you pair this with last year's manager report, the
Mm-hmm.
two together? How could that help a management team?
Yeah. So very rarely nowadays do you see sales management teams, especially that are only management teams. Oftentimes, sales management teams are really playing a dual role of leading a team of salespeople and having to sell themselves, right? And so every great sales manager I ever had was a really great salesperson as well, and that they were able to help me close deals, help me get through the door to a prospect, or help me sort of craft a pitch that works. And so there's going to be aspects of sales managers' lives and their roles that sort of straddle the fence between the management and sort of the development of their people, the thinking of the team first, the thinking of that orientation with their own responsibility to sell. And so, again, in the spirit of sort of helping translate CliftonStrengths into sort of what it looks like day in, day out, one thing that I've seen sales managers do effectively is to have both in front of them, spend some time, maybe theme by theme, and identify what of the statements or the actions that they're seeing do they see showing up more often. Is it more of the management stuff, or is it more of the sales stuff? Is there maybe, are they spending more of their time leaning into the sales manifestation of certain talents versus the manager manifestation? It may help them explore where they need to be spending their time. Are they more comfortable in one versus the other? And so as managers, we're always sort of thinking about what's good for our team, how we develop our team. We can do the same for ourselves too. We don't stop developing once we hit a sales manager goal, right? So I think that's one of the ways I've seen it really sort of pan out, is helping break down how much time, effort, or energy am I spending in each aspect of the role.
I love that. It's some great advice. And I think sometimes, and we know our managers right now are struggling in organizations. Been high
Yeah.
turnover, been a lot of new employees coming in. By the way, this would be, from a sales perspective, how great would this be as an onboarding tool to use with your sales
Yeah.
staff coming in, or support staff that are coming in? Andy made a good comment earlier. He said, also, I asked the question, how are you influencing? And Andy said, I also influence mindsets as well. I work as an agile coach and scrum master. Think about, Austin, for a second. Think about that role, because a lot of organizations are full of project managers,
Yeah.
scrum managers, coaches. How might, in those teams, those production teams, how might they use a report like this to help support those team interactions or those team goals? Because they have projects, right? This is influence. Talk a little bit about that as
Yeah.
we kind of come close to the end here.
Yeah. It's a way I've seen it structured is the idea that as a project manager or scrum master, whatever it may be, you're delivering a product or a project to a set of stakeholders, right? And those stakeholders, if you view them as your customers, have the same needs and barriers that any customer would have. So how do you get your perspective, your opinion, your expertise through to somebody who may not see the value the way you see it? That's influencing people. And many times it relies upon us using things like our thinking and executing themes to convince people of a different way of thinking about something. Those of us who, like I've said this before on conversations, like I'm a big old ball of influence, right? Like my top 10 are full of influencing themes. And so I have to oftentimes sort of step back out of those and lean on things like my thinking themes to gather data to back up, because I can go into a conversation and be so passionate and so influential that I can come across almost preachy and not have the data to back me up. And so being able to understand where's that balance, what theme do I need to really make sure I lean on this going into this conversation, so I can make sure that my point is not just passionate, but it's validated and it's supported. And so being able to help influence decision makers in those ways, if you view your decision makers as your customers, then all of this makes sort of a perfect translation.
Yeah, love that. Eva asks a great question. We hear this a lot. She says, are there specific strengths or themes that make great salespeople, or is it a person's ability to position their strengths to close sales? And
Yeah.
not just close, the whole sales cycle in
Yeah.
general, because you got to have beginners and in the middle and closers as well. Can you answer
Yeah.
that question?
There are absolutely not any specific set of strengths that lead to success in a sales role. Be really clear. If there was, then I guarantee you that people would be lining up to use this to hire salespeople, right? And that's not what we do. This is not a selection tool. It's absolutely about knowing how and when to use strengths, and knowing how and when to push up on certain and pull back on others, right? So the phrase I've often used is, it's about strengths fluency more than it is a certain set of strengths. So being able to know how to use your strengths, how to leverage them, is really what's critical.
I'm a terrible closer. I've admitted that in my influencing cycles before. My strategy has been to lean on others to close.
Mhm.
That's just has worked well. But it is one of those areas. I'm going to take this report. I've already taken a sneak
Mhm.
peek at it. We've had it internally for a couple days, and I've taken a sneak peek at it. But it's one of those areas I'm going to say, are there things in my top 10
Mhm.
that I could do differently to be a better closer at times? So I think there's some great opportunities even for me in this. Eduardo says, could anyone use a sales report to sell themselves? I love this
Mm.
idea. Into
Yeah.
a new job and interview. Lots of folks. There's lots of changing going on in
Yeah.
the marketplace. You want to talk a little bit about that,
Yeah,
Austin?
that's a great application.
Yeah.
It's a great application of this. I've done a lot of work over the years, helping people with like strengths-based resume writing, and sort of translating their natural talents into sort of the written word on resumes. And absolutely, if you're able to think about how your talents help you in sales, and understanding that communication is my number one theme, right? Communication gives me certain advantages as a member of a sales team. And if I can articulate that whatever the role is I'm applying for, that I'm interviewing for, and being able to articulate how my unique makeup makes me the perfect person for that role, then absolutely it's going to help you in interviewing, because it's going to, not only are you going to be able to communicate self-awareness, you're going to be able to communicate value and articulate benefit to the organization. And so being able to think about the end goal you're trying to create, it's a great way to apply at the very end. All right, what's my goal? My goal is to get this job. Or maybe my goal is to get a second interview, right? How do I get that second interview? Well, here's my strengths. Here's how I'm going to use them. Here's how I'll know I've been successful. It's why we include that last page of whatever you're trying to aim this at. It can help you in the sales experience.
I love it. I love it. I think it's a good positive note to kind of wrap this on.
Mhm.
We'll remind individuals if they'd like to purchase this report, gallup.com/CliftonStrengths. and there's lots of information that we have out there available to you. If you haven't subscribed to the Clifton Strengths podcast, we have a lot of great information
Yeah, we
just
do.
like this available out there. You can subscribe on your favorite podcast app. Just search Clifton Strengths and you'll find us out there. Appreciate that. Austin, thanks for taking the time today to be a
Absolutely.
part. Congratulations. You've put a ton of work into this, and it's no small feat to get a new report out. So
No.
congratulations and
My
thanks.
absolute pleasure. It's exciting times, and I can't wait to hear feedback from everybody as they use it.
You bet. We want to thank you for joining us today. Again, if you have questions after the fact, send us an email, coaching. You don't have to be a coach to use the email address, coaching@gallup.com, and we can answer those questions for you. Thanks for coming out today. Enjoy the rest of your day. Have a great weekend. Goodbye, everybody.
I'll take care.